and staring at that message like it was a typo. For a second, I thought she'd sent it to the wrong person. Then I noticed she'd turned off her location sharing. That was new. I typed back before I could overthink it. Noted. Enjoy your freedom. I didn't add a question mark. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask where she was. I hit send and locked my phone. 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. Wait, that's not what I meant. I leaned against the window and looked down at the parking lot 17 stories below. A black sedan I'd seen before was parked across from the entrance. Same tinted windows. Same custom plates. I'd seen it outside her office after hours more than once. I never said anything. I'm a private real estate appraiser. I get paid to strip emotion out of property and name its real value. Square footage. Condition. Risk. No fantasy numbers. No glossy brochure promises. Sarah lives in the opposite world. Commercial director for one of the biggest development firms in the city. She negotiates land deals like she's ordering coffee. She knows how to build narratives. She knows how to sell vision. For the last 6 months, she'd been selling one about us. And standing there with her message on my screen, I realized I'd just declined the offer. By the time I got home that night, her side of the closet was half empty. Not cleared out. Not dramatic. Just curated. The expensive suits were gone. The structured dresses she wore to board meetings, gone. The red heels she said were for investor dinners, gone. What was left looked like a weekend guest's wardrobe. She wasn't there. There was no note. No fight waiting for me. Just silence and a faint trace of her perfume in the hallway. For months, she'd been stepping away in small, professional increments. First, it was late strategy calls that ran past midnight. Then conferences out of state that didn't allow spouses. Then dinners I wasn't invited to because, as she put it once, you'd be bored. It's just corporate politics. I work alone. I drive myself to sites, measure walls, check foundation cracks, verify ownership records. I come home with dust on my shoes and numbers in my head. I don't need a spotlight. I need accuracy. Sarah needed visibility. Panels. Photos. Mentions in business journals. I watched her climb, and I was proud. I really was. But somewhere in that climb, she stopped touching my arm when she walked past me. She stopped asking how my inspections went. Our dinners shifted from conversation to calendar reviews. About 3 months ago, she started using a new phrase. We're just in different phases. She said it casually, like it explained everything. That same month, she upgraded her car. Company lease. Black. Tinted windows. The same model I'd just seen parked below my job site. And that's when I stopped telling myself I was imagining things. She didn't move out completely. That was the smart part. 2 nights later, she came back, calm, composed, carrying a leather weekender like she'd just returned from a normal business trip. She walked in, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "We need to be mature about this. Not emotional, not cruel, just strategic." She suggested separate bedrooms for now. She said space would help us recalibrate. She talked about how couples in high-performance careers sometimes need breathing room to grow individually. It sounded rehearsed, like a presentation she'd already delivered somewhere else. I didn't argue. I moved my things into the guest room myself. Over the next week, she controlled the narrative. She called our friends first. She met them for coffee. When I ran into one of them at the grocery store, he gave me that careful look and said, "I'm sorry you guys are drifting apart. These things happen." Drifting. That word didn't come from him. At home, she acted reasonable. Friendly, even. She'd ask about my contracts. She'd leave her laptop open at the dining table while taking calls in the hallway. I caught fragments. Timing matters. "No, we can't make it public yet. Let's wait until things are cleaner." Cleaner. She started coming home later again, but now there was no pretense. No apology. Just, we agreed on space. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the counter. A name flashed across the screen. It wasn't saved as a first name. It was saved as Office. And that was the moment the word space stopped sounding abstract. I didn't touch her phone. I just stood there, watching it light up again. Office. 2 missed calls in less than a minute. Then a message preview. Call me when you're alone. The shower was still running. I dried my hands, walked out of the bathroom, and went to my office instead. If I was going to confirm anything, it wouldn't be by scrolling through her screen like a desperate husband. It would be through paperwork. 3 days later, I was assigned to evaluate a new luxury development on the north side of the city. Same company Sarah worked for. I'd done projects for them before. Strict firewall policies. Clear reporting lines. No personal overlap. That morning I walked into the model penthouse alone, clipboard in hand. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Custom finishes. The kind of unit reserved for executives or very specific clients. My job required access to ownership disclosures before closing. I logged into the secure portal, pulled the preliminary beneficiary list, and scrolled. The primary holding entity was a shell company. I kept reading. Second beneficiary, private allocation. And then I saw her name. Not as a buyer. Not publicly. Listed under a deferred executive compensation structure tied to performance milestones. The unit would transfer under certain conditions. Conditions tied to the CEO's approval. I didn't need to guess whose approval that meant. I stared at her name longer than necessary. My cursor hovered over the compliance section. There was a mandatory disclosure requirement if a contractor identified a potential conflict of interest involving personal relationships. I closed the file. Then I opened it again. Because if I pretended I hadn't seen it, I'd be complicit. And that was the exact moment her message about space stopped being personal and started becoming professional. That night she texted me from a conference in Chicago. I was sitting in the guest room, the compliance file open on my laptop, her name still staring back at me from the disclosure page. Her message came in at 9:14. We're not breaking up. I just need space. Temporarily. Temporarily. I imagined her in a hotel room 2 states away. Then I checked her public calendar, something she'd forgotten to block. No conference listed. No travel notice filed through her company system. She was meticulous about those. I typed my response without asking a single question. Noted. Enjoy your freedom. I expected a delay. A calculated reply. Instead, 10 minutes later, wait. That's not what I meant. That was the mistake. If she had stayed silent, I might have hesitated. I might have waited. I might have let this drag into one of those polite, slow dissolves where everyone saves face. But that message wasn't confusion. It was panic. I closed my laptop and reopened the compliance portal. There was a digital form labeled Potential Conflict Disclosure, Independent Contractors. My name was already pre-filled. I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't write a paragraph about betrayal. I simply documented what I had observed. Beneficiary listing, executive approval structure, marital relationship. I attached the file. My cursor hovered over the submit button for a full 30 seconds. Once I clicked it, there would be no quiet separation. No friendly narrative about growing apart. I pressed submit. And within 5 minutes, I received an automated confirmation that the matter had been escalated to corporate legal. The fallout didn't explode. It spread. The next morning, Sarah called me before sunrise. Not a text. Not a controlled message. An actual call. Did you file something? She asked. No greeting. I didn't answer right away. I was in my truck outside another property, watching workers unload materials. I disclosed a conflict of interest, I said. That's standard procedure. Silence on the line. Not shock. Calculation. You had no right, she said finally, voice tight. You just made this bigger than it needed to be. Bigger. By noon, I got a formal email from the company's legal department requesting a call. Neutral tone. Professional language. They wanted clarification about the nature of my relationship with the executive beneficiary listed. I told them the truth. She's my wife. We live at the same address. We are currently separating. They didn't react. They just took notes. That afternoon, Sarah stopped answering my calls. Her location remained off. Around 5, one of the industry contacts I've known for years texted me. What's going on over there? Word travels fast when a CEO's compensation structure is flagged. I drove home early. Her car was already in the driveway. The black one, not the company SUV. The other one. Inside, the house felt charged. She was in the living room, standing, not sitting. Like she'd been waiting. You think you're clean in this? She said. I looked at her, really looked at her. You asked for space, I said. I just stopped pretending. Her phone buzzed again on the coffee table. The name wasn't Office anymore. It was his full name. She didn't pick up. She just flipped the phone face down and looked at me like I'd crossed some invisible line. You've put my entire career at risk, she said, slower now, controlled again. Do you understand that? I set my keys on the console table. I reported what I saw. That's it. By the next morning, the company made it official. Internal review. Temporary reassignment of certain executive responsibilities pending compliance verification. That was the language used in the email blast that somehow made its way to half the industry before noon. Sarah didn't go into the office. She worked from home, door closed, voice low but urgent on back-to-back calls. I walked past her office once and caught a sentence through the door. This was supposed to be handled discreetly. Handled. Around lunchtime, she came out, eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. They're reviewing bonus allocations. Do you know what that means? She asked. I did. Deferred compensation structures don't survive scrutiny easily, especially when personal relationships are involved. I didn't create the structure, I said. You benefited from it, she shot back. That was the first time she said it out loud. Not denial, not confusion. Just frustration that the timing had shifted. By evening, another message came through on her phone. She didn't hide it this time. We need to pause until this settles. Not from me. From him. She stared at that screen longer than she'd stared at any message I'd ever sent her. And that's when she realized the space she asked for wasn't empty anymore. 2 days later, she knocked on the guest room door. Not barged in. Knocked. I was reviewing a valuation report, redlining adjustments. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, arms crossed like she was entering a negotiation. We need to talk like adults, she said. I closed the folder but didn't stand up. They're overreacting, she continued. This is temporary. Reviews happen. People get reassigned. It doesn't mean anything. I watched her carefully. No tears. No apology. Just recalibration. You said you needed space, I reminded her. That doesn't mean destroy everything, she replied. You didn't even ask me what was going on. There it was. The accusation that I hadn't fought. You told our friends we were drifting, I said. You moved your clothes out. You turned off your location. You listed yourself on a deferred asset tied to your CEO. Her jaw tightened at that. It wasn't finalized, she said quickly. Nothing was transferred. But it was planned, I answered. Silence filled the room, heavy but not dramatic. Just real. She shifted tone. We can still fix this, she said. Let's separate quietly. File paperwork later. Keep it clean. No more disclosures. No more damage. She wasn't asking to come back. She was asking for containment. I stood up and walked past her into the hallway. You wanted freedom, I said evenly. I'm not taking it from you. When I reached the kitchen, she followed. If this goes to division of assets, she added, voice steady again, we'll both lose. That was the first time she mentioned property. And that's when I realized she still thought this was negotiable. She brought up asset division like it was leverage. We were standing in the kitchen, late afternoon light cutting across the counter. She had that boardroom tone again. Calm, reasonable, strategic. If this turns into a formal separation right now, she said, everything gets audited. Retirement accounts, deferred compensation, investments. You don't want that kind of exposure either. I held her gaze. You remember the post-nup we signed 3 years ago? I asked. Her expression shifted for half a second. Just enough. That was about protecting your independent contracts, she said quickly. It wasn't. It included a professional ethics clause, I interrupted. Full disclosure of contingent assets tied to executive authority. She went quiet. We'd signed that agreement after one of her promotions. Her attorney insisted it would protect both of us from future liability issues. I'd agreed because it seemed practical, transparent, clean. That clause required disclosure of any compensation structure influenced by a direct superior, including deferred property allocations. You didn't list the penthouse structure in our annual disclosures, I said. Not accusing, just stating. Her shoulders stiffened. It wasn't active. It was filed, I replied. For the first time since this started, she looked unsure. Not angry, not defensive, just calculating something new. You're not actually going to enforce that, she said. I didn't raise my voice. I already submitted a compliance notice. The rest is procedural. Her phone buzzed again on the counter. This time, she didn't even look at it. And that's when the power dynamic shifted, not because I yelled, but because she understood the paperwork had already started moving without her. The house was quiet that night. Not tense. Not chaotic. Just still. Sarah packed the rest of her things without slamming drawers or making a scene. She moved through the rooms like someone inventorying a property before closing. Measured. Efficient. Detached. I stayed in the living room and reviewed an inspection summary on my tablet. Square footage. Structural notes. Comparable sales. Normal work. Real numbers. At one point she stopped in the doorway, holding a framed photo from a charity event we'd attended years ago. We were both smiling in it. She looked at it for a few seconds, then set it face down in a box. "I never thought you'd go nuclear," she said quietly. "I didn't," I replied. "I just stopped covering for you." She didn't argue. Her phone buzzed again. Same name. She silenced it without reading. When the last box was sealed, she stood by the front door. For a moment, it felt like she expected me to say something bigger, something emotional, something that would reopen negotiation. I walked past her, unlocked the door, and stepped aside. She hesitated, just slightly, like she was waiting for a counteroffer that wasn't coming. "You could have fought for us," she said. I met her eyes. "You asked for space." She walked out carrying her last bag. I closed the door gently. No slam. No speech.